Final Fantasy XVI, a game that's sort of a mixed bag for people since it strays very differently from its predecessor. It's been controversial all around for changing the entirety of Final Fantasy as a whole and not including racial diversity, but for me, it was almost nearly everything I wanted in an action-type game. Absolutely high boss fights, an entertaining and engaging combat system, and a pretty damn good story, especially the ending part. Picked this game up a month ago along with the PS5, and I had no idea what the game was about going into it. Just got it because I remember it had a pretty cool looking battle system, and that was about it. And damn, that was a great choice because this became one of my favorite games of 2023. It definitely might not be the best due to some flaws, but overall it's a really enjoyable experience. There's a lot of parts of the game which just make you feel on top of the world, which is just pure epicness. So just exactly what parts? Well, let's start off with what you're looking for in a game like this, the gameplay. So since the combat director was from the same guy who developed the Devil May Cry combat, you should have already known that 16 was going to be good, or at least bearable, and guess what? It is. So you have some basic skills like the usual sword slashes, lunges, and range abilities. But where the actual good stuff comes in are the icon abilities, which is the power Clive absorbs whenever he beats up a dominant. You can mix and match special icon abilities with others to create some beautiful combos that will most certainly be pleasing for your eyes. And the thing is, all special abilities just don't have to deal damage. You have Odin's Rift Slip for combo extenders and extended dodge windows, and Titan's Raging Fists to hit a very satisfying parry. And that's one cool thing about the combat, just like the MC, if you actually do a good combo, it feels so goddamn satisfying. Absolute creamable material. So yeah, there's a lot of possibilities for a lot of different scenarios you could use the abilities for, but with that being said, that's kind of all the action gameplay 16 has to offer, because other than that, that's all you got. But if you're willing to accept that this game is an action adventure type of thing, then all shall be fine. So the gameplay loop is basically go to mission, do mission, have some time to do whatever, and then go to the next mission. This might seem a little redundant and repetitive, but at least most of the missions in this game are actually enjoyable. And the reason I say most and not all is because of the few fetch quests that are mandatory. Like, it's definitely fine to have space in between missions, but just having boring fetch quests just pulls you right out of all the hype you just went through, which is just not that fun. So while on the topic of quests and missions, I'll talk a little bit about the story. Now, I kind of suck at explaining and summarizing things, but from what I've played through and experienced, let me just say that the story is pretty goddamn amazing. And of course, taste is subjective, just like every opinion ever, but I just think this game has such a great story. Is it the best? Well, no, it does certainly have pacing issues, but it's a bit up there. A good batch of the characters are interesting, especially Sid, and Barnabas was actually a cool villain. He had a good design, including the icon as well. I feel like he could have been the main antagonist since he completely rivaled Clive in his morals, and he was more interesting than Ultima himself in my opinion. And by the way, Clive Rosfield has been one of my favorite protagonists recently. He's a pretty cool guy, who's also compassionate with a really cool British voice.
The only fantasy here is yours, and we shall be its final witness.
And I'm glad they chose British people to voice, cause Clive wouldn't be hitting so hard if he didn't have one. And speaking of hard-hitting voices,
I think we're gonna need a bigger sword. Mine's bigger. Thank you, Clive. But I meant that figuratively.
all in all, there's just so many cool characters in this game, which also fits the overall theme pretty well. And speaking of themes, this entire game to me still felt like a Final Fantasy game. I know that's a pretty hot take, but the entire experience is magical, which is what Final Fantasy is supposed to be about in my opinion. Which, well, I only played the 7th remake, Stranger of Paradise, and 15, but this game still truly felt like Final Fantasy to me, even if it doesn't carry the same quirks as the others. When this game has its high moments, it has its high and pure epic moments. Let's take the Bahamut fight for example, since it's become one of my favorite moments in gaming. You start off on a weird ass flowery mother crystal as it blooms, and the scenery for the battlefield is already pretty beautiful. It just then gets even crazier due to the battle moving to space. The amount of adrenaline and serotonin is just crazy, and the music for this fight is beautiful, which leads me right to the next topic. The music for this game is quite superb, which is also why it probably won Best Music at the Game Awards. Each and every track fits perfectly with the situation of what's happening, like the Typhon fight Fortnite, for example. You're not hit with a traditional orchestra type beat, it just kinda goes dubstep mode on your ass, which makes sense since Typhon is another weirdly flow. But other than just the genre switching, the songs just go absolutely hard. Sometimes, the songs don't even need to go that hard. They could be one of the most soothing and calming things ever. The tracks just emphasize your actions and really immerses yourself into the game and world. And speaking of the world, it's pretty amazing. The world building with the nations, dominance, and mother crystals is honestly just so interesting. And if anything gets too complicated along the way, the game has a built-in active time lore and an actual timeline built in, which is very, very helpful. Also, let me just say that the graphics are beautiful. Doesn't matter where you are, the scenery and surroundings are almost always nice to look at every time, at the cost of frame rate loss. But unfortunately, this is where the top tier glazing ends. As for everything good, it must be bad. Wait, that's a quote, right? So yeah, I do have some flaws to talk about. My main gripe with the game is that it's a bit repetitive. I know repetition is sometimes good, but the repetitiveness is incredibly simplistic. Like I said before, the gameplay loop is to do a mission, have some spare time, and that's kind of about it. And during the missions, all you can do is walk from point A to point B killing enemies. There's no type of puzzles from what I can remember, so that's really all there is. The exploration's a bit pointless since it really doesn't grant you that much benefits as opposed to other games, and I guess you can't really find the time to do it as well since you're already crowded with so many missions. So the combat's low-key carrying the flow of the game, and also the side quests are just not it. They don't really do much for world building and expanding characters. They're just fetch quests or just to kill something over there. There's not a lot of depth to them, and there's only ever a few side quests where it feels like a true side quest. My other problem would be that there's not actually a lot of customization you could do. The real building part comes from the iconic abilities, which is definitely a big part of the combat, but there could definitely be so much more, like extra perks on swords and maybe even gear sets. Just something a little extra to make it feel like an actual RPG. And one last thing, the cutscenes. I know the entirety of this game is supposed to be cinematic, but the way the cutscenes are placed in the game just don't feel that good. You could walk a bit, get a cutscene, then need you to walk more for just another cutscene. In some parts, the game just feels like a really long movie. So in summary, you just watch a little guy yap for a few minutes, and I hope you got something out of that. If you didn't, sorry, I guess. But thank you for giving me some time to make another video like this. Even if it may not look like a lot of effort, just know I tried a little bit. And by the way, we're a little close to 200 subscribers, and it would make me full of happiness if we hit it around this year. I'll keep trying to pump out content I care about from now on. So see ya, fellows. I'm gonna go on edge.